Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 365. 365. Fun Friday. Okay, so how was I going to handle day 365, the 1-year anniversary of TowerGate? Well, I had a suggestion in the comments, and of course I love taking the advice of the commenters in my comments section that suggested I go back and do a review of the beginning of this whole thing by taking a look at those first 3 or so videos, and that's exactly what I did, and I'm glad I did. Very good advice. So I think today what I'm going to do is go back through the first 3 videos and talk a little bit about how this all got started. Now, I know many of you, if you've been with me for a while, you've probably heard this story, so I won't spend too much time on how it all got started. I'm going to focus more on what I talked about in those first 3 videos. So basically, like I said, it was a Saturday morning. It was March the 4th of 2017. Like most other people on a Saturday morning, I got up and I had a cup of coffee and sat down at my computer just to go through the normal news sites that I normally look at and see what's going on in the world. And of course, as soon as I logged onto my computer and the home page came up, it was all over the home page there in the news section that Trump had tweeted out that he had been wiretapped, had his wires tapped, I believe is the exact phrase he used. Just found out Obama had my wires tapped. And so I spent about maybe an hour just going to every news site that I would normally visit and looking at all the various different stories. I went to Drudge, and I went to Daily Caller, and I went to The Hill, and I went to Red State, and all these various websites, and every one of them had the feature story, top story of the day, biggest breaking news of the day. It was a huge bombshell piece of news that day that Trump had tweeted out very early on that Saturday morning, that he had just learned that he had his wires tapped. So my initial response to that was, well, I'm going to do a video. So I did that first video on March the 4th. And it was only 5 minutes and 42 seconds long, because I was just giving the news. Hey, I guess all of you have heard by now, Trump did a tweet this morning saying that he had just learned that his wires were tapped. And my initial response to that on that 5 minute and 42 second video was simply, well, Trump's making this claim, and right now we're just going to have to wait and see what happens about this. I mean, to see if there's an investigation, if someone calls for an investigation, whether people are going to laugh at him. Is he even joking? Is he even telling the truth? Is he being serious? Who knows? With Trump and tweets, you just never know. But normally, there's a lot of truth in his tweets, and that they usually mean something. And he thinks out his tweets a lot more than I think a lot of people believe he does. He doesn't just tweet stuff out off the top of his head. It seems like there's always some sort of a method to his madness. So I didn't totally discount what Trump was saying. I actually thought, that's a fairly major bombshell to drop, that you're making the accusation that the previous administration tapped your wires. I mean, that's a fairly major, thing to claim, and then knowing good and well how the media was going to react to that, it was a pretty outrageous but courageous thing to do. To come out and make that tweet. Okay, so that video, that first video, 5 minutes and 42 seconds, was simply a video to basically tell everyone what was already all over the news, which is that Trump had came out with his tweet. Now, what's funny too is I looked at the title of that video. There is no TowerGate Day 1. There is no TowerGate Day 2. I didn't actually start using the term TowerGate until day 2, and I didn't use TowerGate and assign it a day number until day 3. So the very first video, 5 minutes and 42 seconds, uploaded on March the 4th, 2017, the morning that Trump did the tweet. The title of that video was Obama Wiretaps Trump. This is going to end badly. That's exactly what my title of that video was. Okay, so the rest of that day and part of the next day, I'm just following the story. And of course, it didn't take long for the left-wing media to jump all over Trump and accuse him of being crazy and making these crazy claims and all this sorts of thing. I mean, they jumped all over Trump. But he never came out that day and backed down at all. He didn't back out of it. He didn't do anything like that. I mean, he didn't do anything that would suggest that he was joking or that he wasn't serious or what have you. So the media began having a field day, and I monitored the news all that next day, which would have been the Sunday, the day after the initial tweet. And then later that evening, I did a second video. And I then called that TowerGate because at that point, it had been rumored, as a lot of talk was happening, that it had something to do with there being surveillance on electronic devices at Trump Tower. So that is where the term TowerGate came from. It was because on the day after the tweet, they were talking about possibly what Trump was talking about was that there may have been some surveillance on electronic devices at Trump Tower. That was obviously a leak. We know that now. We didn't know it on day 2. So the TowerGate, the second video, which was 14 minutes and 36 seconds long, the title of that video was Politically Motivated? ? If so, somebody will hang. So as we can see, that second day, Trump wasn't backing down, and he was already taking a lot of heat. And now we were starting to get this little bit of leaking already, and being suggested that maybe it was the Trump Tower that was under surveillance, and not so much him, but some device or something going on at Trump Tower. Clearly a leak, because we found out later that, in fact, there was an investigation and surveillance on devices in Trump Tower. So I thought about this all day on Sunday, and then on Monday, with even more breaking news following this story, I decided on that day, and it was on that video, which I titled on the third day, which was the Monday. I titled that video TowerGate Day 3. So the third day was the very first day that I used the title of TowerGate and assigning a day to it. So the third video was called TowerGate Day 3. And the title of that video was Comey and Clapper Deny Wiretapping Trump. Comey and Clapper deny wiretapping Trump. It's amazing that we look back now, we're 1 year away from that, and we know what a massive lie that was. Now, in a way, it was semantics, lying using semantics. Because, oh yeah, there was no FISA warrant on Trump personally. They didn't go get a FISA warrant on Trump. They got the FISA warrant on Carter Page. They had the FISA warrant on Manafort. And then, of course, they had an ongoing warrant on the Russian ambassador, Kislyak, because he communicated with lots of Americans and American politicians as part of his job as a Russian diplomat in the U.S. And I guess they thought, well, if we listen in on Kislyak, he'll be talking to Trump transition team members. And people in the Trump administration, so we might find out something by listening to Kislyak. And that's, I assume, how Flynn got caught up, is the call that was listened to by Flynn and Kislyak. So day 3, we have Comey and Clapper coming out, because by now, day 3 on that Monday, it's a huge story, and people are starting to line up and take sides. There weren't very many people taking Trump's side on day 3, I can tell you that. Not even Republicans, some who are somewhat loyal to him or whatever, were still very skittish about backing Trump on that because he had presented no evidence. He'd come out and made the tweet, but he never followed it up by saying how he learned about it or anything like that or any evidence at all. So the third video, I got more into depth, and it's really what really happened was on that Sunday. It dawned on me that as I thought more about it, I thought, Trump would never tweet this out, knowing good and well the flack he's going to take. He has to have had some information. He has to have learned something. There has to be something to this. He would never set himself up for this kind of abuse and create this kind of chaos. You're accusing the previous administration of wiretapping you. I mean, that's a fairly criminal thing. And so the more I began to think about it, I thought, Trump is not that stupid. He has to know something. There's got to be something to this. And if this turns out to be true, as I said in the previous day's video, somebody will hang. I started thinking a lot about Watergate. And being someone who studied Watergate, I grew up, I was 9 or 10 years old when Watergate all went down. I remember it very well. I read every book on the subject. I studied it. I wrote a paper on it. I was really dug into Watergate and understood what happened with Watergate very, very well. And so the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I really believe that there's something going on here. And if there's any truth whatsoever to what Trump has tweeted, that he had his wires tapped at Trump Tower, if there's any truth to that whatsoever, this will be the biggest bombshell, the biggest political scandal in modern American history. And that's when I decided that I would start doing a daily video to follow the story. And I said that in that third video. In that third video I said, okay, I've arrived at this conclusion, that I think Trump is not pulling our leg. This is not a joke. It's not a crazy Trump tweet. This is, something's going on. He has to have been told something. He has to know something. I think there's something here. I don't know where all this is going to go. It may be over in a couple days, a couple weeks. It may go on for a year or two or more. Watergate took 2 years and 10 months to unravel. So I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a daily video and follow this story day by day until it finally has played itself out and we get to the truth of what really happened here. And so that was really the beginning of the TowerGate video series. It would have been day 3, TowerGate day 3, Comey and Clapper deny wiretapping Trump. That would have been really when I locked my mind onto the situation, came to a decision with myself that, in fact, this is a lot more than just a crazy Trump tweet. There's something to this, and I think it's going to lead somewhere. And so I made a lot of comments during this third video, and so I want to go through some of these things that happened, that I said, and some of the things that were going on at that time, because it was pretty chaotic. For at least a week after that tweet, it was total chaos. It was still the top story every day about people trying to either A, raise questions about Trump's sanity for tweeting out something like this, was all the left-wing media, left-wing pundits, Republicans who are opposed to him. And it was also about a few people who were taking it seriously and asking the question, wait a minute, what if there's something to this? What if Trump were wiretapped? Hey, why don't we talk to the people who would have known? And that is on day 3 when they actually started going to people like Comey and Clapper and Lynch and people like that and trying to ask them, was there any type of surveillance going on with Trump? So this is kind of where we were on the third day. So what happens, also I should note that on that third day, John McCain, Senator Magoo, was asked about Trump's tweet. And Senator Magoo said, let him prove it. McCain told Trump, let him prove it. Well, I think he's proven it, John, in spades. And he's proven that you, Senator Magoo, were a big part of it. By the way, Senator Magoo is going to be announcing his retirement from the Senate sometime in the next probably less than 10 days. I understand that he is very, very close to leaving this world, you might say. So McCain is going to be leaving the Senate very soon, for one reason or another. Anyway, getting back to this. So what happens on day 3? The New York Times learns about the FISA warrants. So on day 3, whether it was leaked to the New York Times or whether they actually, in response to the 2 previous days of activity, everybody wanting to know, was Trump surveilled or whatever, I guess the New York Times either using their sources or else some sources leaked to them, and they wrote a story saying, yep, there were FISA warrants. There were 2. The first one was rejected and the second one was approved. And that the FISA warrants were actually not on Trump personally, which is how Comey and Clapper were playing it. See, when Comey and Clapper were asked about wiretapping Trump, like, no. We never wiretapped Trump. We'd have known about that. Yeah, that's true. They never got a FISA warrant on Trump. They got the FISA warrant on Page and Manafort, and then of course they were listening to Kislyak. So yeah, that's kind of the truth, but then again, it's a lie, because they knew that by getting Manafort and Carter, Page, you get Trump's entire team and probably Trump himself, because he communicates with them. So it was kind of a white lie, I guess you would say. But now, of course, we know there were much more involved. We know that, of course, Comey signed off on warrants, on the FISA warrants. Clapper had to know everything. He's the director of national intelligence. Everything goes through him. He knows all of this stuff. So they were essentially lying. So the New York Times writes the story on what we would call TowerGate Day 3. On that video is what I cover, is that the New York Times had written a story on that Monday, following the Saturday morning tweet, where they had learned about the FISA warrants, that the first one was rejected, the second one was approved, but that the FISA warrants were not on Trump personally, but they were on a server at Trump Tower. And so this is really where the TowerGate name came from. I didn't even remember where the name came from, but now I do. It came from the fact that on day 3, the New York Times wrote a story where they said that, in fact, they learned it was true, that there was surveillance on Trump Tower. So that's why I began calling it TowerGate, because it was about the surveillance that had gone on at Trump Tower. So, you learn something new every day. And now I know why I call my TowerGate videos TowerGate. And the reason that they got the FISA warrants was because they had believed that the Trump server, the server up in Trump Tower, was communicating with foreign banks. That's the story that was written in the New York Times then. Now we now know who that foreign bank was, or at least one of them. We know it was Alpha Bank. And of course, the 3 oligarchs who own that bank are in the process of suing Fusion GPS and BuzzFeed. Now, I suggested in that video, as I was going through my mind and thinking about this, and thinking about the statement that Comey and Clapper had made on that day, and I'm thinking to myself, well, if Comey and Clapper are denying it, you know, there's another way around this. We haven't heard from Brennan, the CIA director. Maybe John Brennan used the British GCHQ, because we know that the CIA is a foreign intelligence service. They're not supposed to be operating domestically, but a lot of times they do. But they really can't go get a FISA warrant to spy on a domestic person. They would have to go to the FBI and say, hey, we're kind of involved in a foreign intelligence operation, but there's some Americans involved, and so we need to surveil these people. But of course, that's not in our jurisdiction. It's FBI. So then they'll go to FBI intelligence and say, hey, can you guys get the surveillance warrant on these American citizens? And then, of course, we'll expect you to share that information with us as part of our investigation or what have you. So I suggested on that day that possibly John Brennan used the British GCHQ, because that's a way of skirting around things, so that way Comey and Clapper could say, hey, we didn't do any surveillance, we didn't do anything on Trump. But Brennan hadn't commented at this point, and so I suggested, because he hadn't commented at this point, and because Trump was an American citizen, as well as all his campaign team, that if they were doing surveillance on him or people around him, that it likely would have been done through the British GCHQ, because they actually are in Langley, Virginia, in the same office with the CIA. And we do the same for them. We spy on British citizens for the British government when they can't do it. So this is something that's been going on for years, and I know this. And so this is a point that I made on that TowerGate Day 3 video, that it may have been surveillance launched by Brennan of the CIA using British GCHQ, which is the British version of the NSA, to actually do the dirty work. Clapper, of course, said that there was no FISA warrant on Trump, and he said he would have known. And of course, that's true. As far as we know, there was no FISA warrant on Trump. But again, as I've explained in many videos, when you get a FISA warrant to spy on a target, you get to spy on that target and everyone they talk to, and everyone they talk to, and everyone they talk to. You get to go out 6 degrees. And when you go out 6 degrees from Carter Page, they might end up listening to you. You know what I mean? Because when you go out 6 degrees from one person, you can be talking about hundreds or even thousands of people. Comey also saying that there was no FISA request for surveillance on Trump. Again, that would be true if you're talking about mincing words. Was the FISA surveillance warrant on Trump? No, it was on Carter Page, and we expect Paul Manafort, and of course they were listening to Kislyak's calls. Loretta Lynch, at that point, had not come out and made a public comment, and at this point it doesn't appear from anywhere that I could find on that day where she had been asked about it, but she certainly had not commented, and as far as we knew, we didn't know anything about what Loretta Lynch had to say about the topic. I also stated on that third TowerGate video that I believed that there was some kind of a surveillance operation, because I just didn't think Trump would lie about something like that, and that it was very likely a destruction campaign against Trump. At that time I said I believe this is some sort of a campaign by the deep state to destroy Trump. I said that on day 3. And we also learned, or we found out, and it was revealed on that day, that in fact there was an investigation into Trump-Russia collusion, and that's something that was revealed by the New York Times. And I also suggested in that video that Trump would probably never get to the bottom of this if he relied on Congress, or if he even relied on a special counsel. I said that would be completely corrupted, because they'll use some inside guy who's going to go in and protect the deep state and cover it all up. I said that on day 3. And I suggested that the best thing Trump could do would be to declassify the FISA surveillance applications and let us see exactly whether or not there were applications to spy on Trump, or who their spying was to be conducted on, and what the purpose and the reason was, what the probable cause was to secure those warrants. I said all this on day number 3. But then again, I didn't know that Nunes and Jordan and some of these other guys in the Freedom Caucus would pop up and begin a serious investigation. So I got that part wrong. I didn't count on Nunes and Jordan and those guys being able to come out and do what they've been doing. So I was wrong on that point. The fact is, now I was right 90%. About 90% of the Congress is not on board, but I forgot about the other 10% that have shown the courage to come up, to step up, to come forward and actually investigate what really happened. So there you go. That is the story of TowerGate, how it all got started, and how we got these first 3 videos going, and how it led to where we are today, day 365 of TowerGate. Thank you so much for everyone who's been with me since the beginning or jumped along somewhere along the way. We'll continue to follow the story, like I said, from day 1 until we get to the bottom of it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy your Friday evening. We'll be back Saturday with more incredible news. Thanks so much. See you guys. Bye.